Danny Crawford wiped the sweat from his forehead and checked the cargo manifest one more time. The numbers matched perfectly, just like they always did when he handled the inventory. Waypoint 7 was busy today, with ships coming and going from every corner of known space. He liked it this way because when everyone was busy, nobody paid attention to one quiet human working in the lower cargo docks. That was exactly how Danny wanted things to be after 3 years on the station. He had perfected the art of being invisible. The massive cargo bay stretched out before him like a metal canyon. Crates and containers stacked 5 stories high created narrow pathways that only experienced workers knew how to navigate. Different species moved through the space with practiced efficiency. The tall Vethric with their blue skin and triple-jointed arms handled the delicate equipment. The stocky Herzen rolled heavy containers on their powerful shoulders. Even a few Zanari floated through the upper levels, their crystalline bodies catching the harsh industrial lights. Danny moved between them all like a ghost in work coveralls. He checked seals, verified weight distributions, and made sure everything was exactly where it should be. This was his world now, and he was content with its predictable rhythm. A sharp alarm cut through the ambient noise of the cargo bay. Danny looked up to see red warning lights flashing near loading platform 7. Something had gone wrong with the automated systems. Workers nearby stopped what they were doing and backed away from the platform as it shuddered and groaned. The hydraulics were failing, and the entire structure was tilting at a dangerous angle. Protocol said to evacuate the immediate area and let the safety systems handle it. Danny started moving that direction anyway, because old habits died hard. That was when he saw her. A small Vethric child stood frozen on the edge of the platform, 3 stories above the cargo bay floor. She could not have been more than 6 years old in human terms. Her small hands gripped a container that was far too heavy for her to hold. The platform lurched again, and the child stumbled. Danny's heart stopped as he watched her tiny form tip forward into empty air. Everything seemed to slow down in that terrible moment. He saw at least a dozen workers in the immediate area. None of them moved. The Vethric workers turned away as if they had not seen anything at all. A Herzen nearby actually stepped back, putting more distance between himself and the falling child. Even the Zanari observer simply floated in place, watching with those unreadable crystalline eyes. Danny did not think. He just ran. His boots pounded against the metal floor as he calculated angles and distances without conscious thought. 20 meters to cover, maybe 3 seconds before impact. He pushed his legs harder than he had in years. An old training manual from his search and rescue days flashed through his mind. Position your body to absorb the impact. Protect the victim first, worry about yourself second. Danny slid into position just as the child completed her fall. The impact drove him to his knees with brutal force. His left shoulder screamed in protest as it dislocated from the strain. Pain exploded through his chest where the child's weight had crashed into him. But his arms were secure around her small body. And she was breathing. That was all that mattered. The child started crying in high-pitched wails that echoed through the suddenly silent cargo bay. Danny held her carefully against his chest with his good arm and struggled to his feet. His left arm hung useless at his side, but he ignored it. The little girl was shaking with fear and shock, her large eyes darting around wildly. Hey, you're okay," Danny said softly. His voice steady despite the pain. "I've got you now. Nothing's going to hurt you." He looked around the cargo bay and felt cold anger rising in his chest. Dozens of workers stood frozen in place, staring at him. Not one had moved to help. Not one had even tried. A Vethric in expensive merchant robes pushed through the crowd. His face showed shock and something that looked like horror. "Human, put that child down immediately," the Vethric ordered, his voice sharp with authority. Danny looked at him and then at the crying child in his arms. No, he said simply. You do not understand, the Vethric continued. Moving closer, that child is from the labor caste. You cannot touch her. It is forbidden by our law. Danny shifted his grip on the little girl and felt his dislocated shoulder pulse with fresh pain. She fell, he said, his voice quiet but carrying through the silent bay. I caught her. Our laws are clear, the Vethric began. Your laws? Danny interrupted, his voice still calm. Your laws had every single one of you standing there watching a child fall to her death. The Vethric's face darkened with anger. You are new to galactic society, human. You cannot understand the complexities of Vethric culture. I understand that a child was falling and nobody moved, Danny said. The little girl had stopped crying now and was clinging to his shirt with both small hands. She seemed to sense that this strange alien was keeping her safe. More Vethric were arriving now, including several in military uniforms. Danny recognized the insignia of station security among them. Captain Lisa Wong pushed through the crowd, her human face showing concern mixed with frustration. Danny, what happened here? She asked, though her eyes were already taking in the scene. Kid fell from loading platform 7, Danny explained. I caught her, and now you need to let medical personnel examine her, Lisa said carefully. I will, Danny agreed. Once her mother gets here, that is not acceptable. The Vethric merchant shouted, Ambassador Krell is on his way to handle this situation, and you will follow proper procedure. Danny looked down at the child in his arms. She had buried her face against his shoulder and showed no signs of wanting to let go. Where's her mother? He asked quietly. The mother is being located. One of the Vethric officers said, she will face disciplinary action for allowing the child into a restricted work area. Disciplinary action? Danny repeated slowly. She will be punished? Of course, the officer replied as if it were obvious. She violated multiple regulations. Danny felt something cold settle in his chest. So let me understand this, he said, his voice very quiet now. This kid falls because your safety protocols failed. None of you moved to help her, and now you want to punish her mother? You cannot possibly understand, the merchant began. You're right, Danny interrupted. I don't understand how a civilization builds space stations and warships but won't catch a falling child. The crowd had grown larger now, with representatives from at least 6 different species watching the confrontation. Danny could see recording devices in several hands. Whatever happened next would be all over the station within minutes. I am Ambassador Krell, a new voice announced. A tall Vethric in elaborate robes strode into the cargo bay, his bearing radiating authority. Human, you will release that child into proper custody immediately. Danny looked at the ambassador and then at all the Vethric surrounding him. None of them seemed to care that they had let a child fall. They only cared that he had broken some rule by catching her. No, Danny said again, more firmly this time. This is not a negotiation, Ambassador Krell started. You're right, Danny agreed. It's not. He shifted the child to his good arm. Ignoring the spike of pain from his shoulder, she fell. I caught her. And if you think I'm handing her over to people who watched her fall and did nothing, you can try to take her from me? The cargo bay fell completely silent. Ambassador Krell's face showed genuine shock. You are threatening a galactic ambassador? He asked in disbelief. I'm protecting a child, Danny replied. From everyone who already failed her once today. Station security began moving closer, and Danny could see more Vethric military personnel arriving. The little girl whimpered and held on to him tighter. It's okay, Danny whispered to her. I won't let them hurt you. He looked up at the assembled crowd and squared his shoulders despite the pain. So who wants to be the first one to try? The standoff stretched into its second hour. Danny sat on a cargo container with his back against a support beam, the little Vethric girl still in his arms. His shoulder throbbed with constant pain. But he had dealt with worse during his years in Alaska. Station security had formed a loose perimeter around him. Not threatening but definitely present. Captain Lisa Huang stood nearby with her arms crossed, clearly trying to figure out how to resolve this situation without violence. Ambassador Krell had moved back from the immediate area but remained in the cargo bay with a growing number of Vethric officials. They spoke among themselves in low voices, occasionally glancing at Danny with expressions that ranged from anger to confusion. The child had fallen asleep against Danny's chest, exhausted from fear and shock. He kept his good arm wrapped protectively around her small form. "Danny," Lisa said quietly, moving closer. "Medical says she needs to be examined properly. They can't do a full scan from a distance." "I know," Danny replied without looking up. "Where's her mother?" "They're still locating her," Lisa said, but something in her tone suggested that was not entirely true. Danny finally looked up at his friend and colleague. "They don't want to bring her here, do they?" Lisa's silence was answer enough. "Let me guess," Danny continued. "They want to arrest the mother first. Maybe make her disappear before anyone asks uncomfortable questions." "I didn't say that," Lisa replied carefully. "You didn't have to," Danny said. The cargo bay doors opened and a group of human workers entered. Danny recognized most of them from various sections of the station. Greg Palmer led them, a cargo trader who Danny had shared a few meals with over the years. "Heard you could use some company," Greg said casually as the group of about 20 humans spread out near Danny's position. They did not say anything threatening or make any aggressive moves. They just stood there, creating a human barrier between Danny and the Vethric officials. Ambassador Krell's face darkened with anger. "This is completely unacceptable," he shouted. "You are interfering with official Vethric business." "We're just standing here," Greg replied with exaggerated innocence. "Last I checked." The cargo bay was open to all station personnel. More humans began arriving in small groups. Within 30 minutes, there were at least 50 of them scattered throughout the cargo bay. None carried weapons, none made threats. But their presence sent a clear message. A new figure entered the bay, and the crowd parted to let them through. The Zanari observer floated forward, their crystalline body chiming softly with each movement. "This one would speak," the Zanari announced in their melodic voice. Ambassador Krell looked surprised but nodded. The Zanari were known for their absolute neutrality in galactic affairs. Their observations carried weight in council deliberations. "This one witnessed the incident," the Zanari continued. "The human spoke truth. The child fell and none moved to assist. The child is labor caste." Ambassador Krell protested. "Our laws clearly state, your laws do not extend to questions of child welfare," the Zanari interrupted. "This has been established in 17 previous council rulings." The Zanari floated closer to Danny and the sleeping child. This one asks, why did none of the Vethric present attempt to save this small life? Ambassador Krell's mouth opened and closed several times. "It is complicated," he finally managed. "The caste system has rules that must be followed for social order." "Social order," the Zanari repeated, their tone somehow conveying deep skepticism. This one observes that the human had no knowledge of your social order. Yet he acted to preserve life. That is the problem. Krell exploded. He had no knowledge, no understanding. He should have stayed out of Vethric affairs. "The child was falling," Danny said quietly, speaking for the first time in over an hour. "That's not a Vethric affair. That's physics." Several humans nearby tried to hide their smiles. Even some of the non-Vethric security personnel looked amused. Ambassador Krell's expression suggested he wanted to order Danny arrested immediately. Before he could speak, the cargo bay doors opened again. A Vethric woman entered, flanked by 2 guards. She was thin and worn-looking, her clothing marking her as labor caste. Her eyes immediately found the child in Danny's arms, and she let out a small cry. "Sella!" she called out, starting forward. The guards grabbed her arms, holding her back. "Let her through," Danny said, his voice carrying authority despite his seated position. "That is not possible," Ambassador Krell said. "She is under arrest for multiple violations. She's the mother," Danny interrupted. "And her daughter needs her. The child will be placed in proper caste-appropriate care," Krell replied. "The mother will face justice for her crimes." Danny looked at the woman struggling in the guard's grip. He saw the fear and desperation in her eyes. The same look he had seen on too many faces during his rescue work. "What crimes?" he asked Krell. "She brought a child into a restricted work area. Was she working here?" Danny interrupted. Krell hesitated. "The child was present during her shift, so she was working, and the only way to work was to bring her kid along?" Danny pressed. "That suggests the real problem is your labor policies, not her parenting. You dare to question Vethric law?" Krell demanded. "I'm questioning any law that separates a scared kid from her mother," Danny replied. He looked at the woman again and then at the sleeping child in his arms. "Hey, Sella," he said softly, gently shaking the little girl. She stirred and opened her large eyes, momentarily confused. Then she saw her mother and immediately started reaching for her. "Mama!" she cried. The sound of that word seemed to affect everyone in the cargo bay. Whatever language barriers existed, the meaning was universal. "Last chance," Danny said to Ambassador Krell. "Let the mother through, or I start asking why you're more interested in punishing people than making sure this child is okay. You have no authority here." Krell shouted. "No," Danny agreed, "but I've got something better." He gestured at the assembled humans around him. "I've got 50 people who are just as stubborn as I am. 60 now," a new voice called from the entrance. More humans were arriving. "Make that 75, Greg added, checking his communicator. "And I'm getting messages from humans on 3 different ships in dock. They want to know if they should come over. This is mutiny." Ambassador Krell declared. "This is standing up for what's right," Greg corrected. Big difference. A new alarm started blaring, and everyone's attention snapped to the cargo bay displays. A Vethric warship had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the station. "The VSS Enforcer is here," Ambassador Krell announced with satisfaction. "They will restore proper order." "Great," Danny said, his voice flat. "More people who think following rules is more important than helping kids." Captain Lisa Huang's communicator chirped urgently. She listened for a moment, then her face went pale. "Danny," she said carefully, 3 human cargo ships just changed course. They're heading here." "How far out?" Greg asked. "Less than an hour," Lisa replied. She looked at Danny with a mixture of exasperation and concern. "What did you do?" "I caught a kid," Danny said simply. "That's all I did. That's enough." A Herzam dockworker spoke up for the first time. The stocky alien stepped forward from the crowd. "This human speaks truth. I saw the child fall. I did nothing because I feared Vethric law." He looked at Ambassador Krell with something like shame on his broad face. "But watching him protect her, I see my failure clearly." "As do I," another voice added. A Relian engineer emerged from the group of observers. "We have all stood by while Vethric laws hurt the innocent. This human shows us another path." Ambassador Krell looked around the cargo bay and seemed to realize he was losing control of the situation. "The Enforcer's commander will not be swayed by emotional appeals," he warned. "Then he'll have to deal with the same problem I'm giving you," Danny replied. "A human who won't move," Sella whimpered again. Reaching desperately for her mother, the Vethric woman was crying now, tears streaming down her blue-tinted face. "Please," she begged. "Please let me hold my daughter." Danny locked eyes with Ambassador Krell. "Last chance," he repeated. Let her through or explain to the galaxy why you wouldn't. The cargo bay fell silent except for the soft crying of mother and child. Ambassador Krell's face showed the moment he realized his position was untenable. "Fine," he snapped. "Allow the mother through." But she remains under guard. The two guards released the woman, and she ran forward. Danny carefully transferred Sella into her mother's arms. The reunion was immediate and tearful, with Sella clinging to her mother while the woman sobbed in relief. "Thank you," she whispered to Danny. "Thank you so much." Danny nodded and finally allowed himself to wince at the pain in his shoulder. "Lisa," he called to the captain, "now can I get medical attention?" "You're such a pain," Lisa said, but she was smiling. "Yeah," Danny agreed, "but I'm a pain who catches falling kids." The medical team arrived with scanning equipment and a portable treatment unit. Danny sat still while they examined his shoulder, running their devices over the injury with professional efficiency. "Dislocated," the Herzon medic confirmed. "I need to reset it." "Do it," Danny said through gritted teeth. The medic worked quickly, and Danny managed not to scream when his shoulder popped back into place. The pain was immediate and intense, then slowly faded to a dull ache. They fitted him with a brace and gave him something for the pain. "You should rest for at least a week," the medic advised. "Sure," Danny lied, knowing he would be back at work tomorrow, across the cargo bay. Another medical team examined Sella while her mother, Nara, held her hand. The little girl was frightened by all the equipment but seemed calmer with her mother present. Danny watched them carefully, making sure the Vethric guards kept their distance. Captain Lisa Huan approached with a datapad in hand. "The Vethric warship will dock in 30 minutes, she informed him. "Their commander is demanding immediate custody of both Sella and Nara." "Not happening," Danny said flatly. "Danny, this is getting out of control," Lisa said, her voice low. "The VSS Enforcer has a full battalion of troops on board, and those 3 human cargo ships are armed with nothing but attitude." "Sometimes attitude is enough," Greg Palmer interjected, joining their conversation. "I've been talking to the human ships. They're willing to position themselves between the warship and the station." "That's insane," Lisa said. "They'll be destroyed in seconds." "Maybe," Greg agreed. "But it sends a message. You want to hurt that kid. You go through us first." Lisa rubbed her temples like she had a headache. "There has to be a diplomatic solution here." "There is," Danny said. "The Vethric dropped their charges against Nara and guarantee safety for both of them." "Ambassador Krell will never agree to that," Lisa replied. "It would mean admitting their caste system is wrong. Then we have a problem," Danny said simply. The cargo bay had become a strange kind of gathering place. More species had arrived to witness the standoff. Some brought food and water for the humans, maintaining their protective positions. A group of Zenari had established themselves as neutral observers, recording everything for the Galactic Council. Danny noticed a young Vethric officer standing apart from his colleagues. The officer kept looking at Sella and her mother with an expression that seemed like longing or regret. After a few minutes, the officer approached Danny cautiously. "May I speak with you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sure," Danny replied. The officer glanced around nervously before continuing. "My name is Vex. I am a junior tactical officer on the Enforcer. Nice to meet you." "Vex," Danny said. "I should not be here," Vex continued. "I should be on my ship preparing for our commander's orders." "But," Danny prompted. "But I had to see for myself," Vex said. "Looking at Sella, I had to see the child that one of your kind saved." Danny waited, sensing there was more. "I had a sister," Vex said quietly. "She was lower caste, like that little one." He paused, and Danny could see pain in the alien's eyes. "She fell from a transport platform when I was young. Everyone watched. No one helped because of caste law. I'm sorry," Danny said sincerely. I have spent my whole life trying to understand why, Vex continued. Why rules were more important than her life, watching you today. I finally understand. Understand what? Danny asked that the rules were wrong. Vex said simply, that we were all wrong to follow them. Ambassador Krell's voice cut through the cargo bay. Officer Vex, return to your ship immediately. Vex straightened but did not move away. I resign my commission, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I will not serve a government that values law over life. The cargo bay fell silent. Ambassador Krell's face showed absolute shock. You cannot resign, he sputtered. You are under military contract. Arrest me then, Vex said calmly. Add me to your list of criminals for caring about children. He turned back to Danny and offered a formal Vethric bow. Thank you for showing me that there is another way. Danny nodded. Not quite sure what to say, Greg leaned over and whispered. I think you just started a revolution. I just caught a kid, Danny insisted. Yeah, well, Greg said with a grin. Sometimes that's how revolutions start. The station's communication system crackled to life. This is Commander Vex of the VS Enforcer, a harsh voice announced. I am ordering all non-Vethric personnel to evacuate the cargo bay immediately. Failure to comply will be considered an act of aggression. Nobody moved. Danny looked around at the assembled humans and felt something like pride. These were not soldiers or warriors. They were cargo handlers. Engineers, traders, and dock workers, but every single one of them had decided that protecting one child was worth standing up to a warship. Second warning. Commander Vex's voice came again. Evacuate immediately or face the consequences. Captain Wong, Danny called out. You should probably leave. This is going to get messy. Lisa stared at him for a long moment. Danny Crawford, you are the most stubborn, infuriating, recklessly noble person I have ever met. I'll take that as a compliment, Danny said. It was meant as one, Lisa replied. She moved to stand beside him instead of leaving. I can't let you face this alone. You don't have to, Danny started. Shut up and accept help when it's offered, Lisa interrupted. Danny smiled despite the situation. The cargo bay doors opened, and a full company of Vethric soldiers entered in formation. They wore combat armor and carried weapons designed to subdue without killing. Commander Vex walked at their head, his bearing military precise. He was older than Ambassador Krell and had the look of someone who had seen real combat. This is your final warning, Commander Vex announced. Surrender the child and the labor caste criminal immediately. The child has a name, Danny said, standing up from the cargo container. It's Sella, and her mother's name is Nara. Not labor caste criminal. Commander Vex's eyes narrowed as he studied Danny. You are the human who started this incident. I'm a human who caught a falling child, Danny corrected. That's not an incident. That's called basic decency. You have interfered with Vethric law, Commander Vex began. Your law says to let children die, Danny interrupted. So maybe your law needs to change. The soldiers behind Commander Vex shifted uncomfortably. Some of them glanced at Sella, who was peeking out from behind her mother's legs. Advance, Commander Vex ordered. The soldiers began moving forward in a coordinated line. The humans in the cargo bay linked arms, forming a human chain between the soldiers and Nara's position. Move them, Commander Vex commanded. The first soldier reached the human line and hesitated. These were unarmed civilians, not combatants. I said move them. Commander Vex shouted. The soldier raised his weapon, a non-lethal crowd control device, before he could activate it. 3 Zenari floated between the soldiers and the humans. This one invokes Article 7 of the Galactic Charter, the lead Zenari announced. Children under threat may seek sanctuary with any willing species, regardless of origin world law. That article has never been applied to, Commander Vex started. It has never been challenged, the Zenari corrected. This one is challenging it now. These humans offer sanctuary to this child and her mother. Under galactic law, you cannot interfere. Commander Dex looked furious. But he was also clearly uncertain. Violating the Galactic Charter was a serious matter, even for a powerful species like the Vethric. The Council will never support this interpretation, he said. Then let the Council decide, the Zanari replied, until they rule. The sanctuary stands. A new voice came over the communication system. This one human. Waypoint 7. This is Captain Rodriguez of the cargo vessel Prairie Dog. Everyone looked up at the speakers. We have 2 other human ships with us. We are positioning ourselves between your station and the Vethric warship. This is station control, Lisa spoke into her communicator. Rodriguez, that's not necessary. With respect. Captain Huang, Rodriguez interrupted. One of ours is protecting a kid. We're not going to leave him hanging. Danny closed his eyes and felt something tight in his chest. He had been alone for so long, working in isolation and avoiding connections. Now these people, most of whom he barely knew, were risking their lives for him, not for him, he realized, for Sela, for the idea that children should not fall while everyone watches. Thank you, Captain Rodriguez, Danny said into Lisa's communicator. But if shooting starts, you get out of here. Negative, Rodriguez replied. We didn't come all this way to run at the first sign of trouble. Commander Dex was speaking urgently into his own communication device. His face showed frustration and growing concern. Finally, he turned back to the assembled crowd. I have been ordered to stand down pending council review, he announced. But this is not over. The Vethric government will not forget this insult. We're not trying to insult anyone, Danny said. We're just trying to keep a kid safe. Commander Dex stared at him for a long moment. You have no idea what forces you have set in motion. Human, maybe not, Danny admitted. But I know what I saw. A child falling and nobody helping. That is our way, Commander Dex said. Then maybe it's time for a new way, Danny replied. 3 days passed in tense uncertainty. The Vethric warship remained docked at Waypoint 7. Its presence, a constant reminder of the conflict. The 3 human cargo ships maintained their position, creating a symbolic shield between the warship and the station. Danny had been moved to a private section of the medical bay for his own safety. Station security insisted it was for his protection, though he suspected it was also to keep him from causing more diplomatic incidents. Nara and Sela had been given quarters nearby under the protection of the Zanari delegation. The little girl visited Danny every day, bringing him drawings she made with the art supplies someone had given her. Today's picture showed a blue stick figure catching a smaller blue stick figure. Is that me? Danny asked, pointing at the taller figure. Sela nodded enthusiastically. You catched me, she said in halting but improving English. Mama says you are my Earth Guardian. Danny felt something warm in his chest at those words. I'm just glad you're okay, he said. Nara stood in the doorway, watching them with grateful eyes. She asks about you constantly, Nara said. Wants to know when she can visit the nice human who flies. Danny laughed at Sela's description of his catch. Well, I'm not going anywhere for a while. None of us are, Nara replied. Her smile fading, Ambassador Krell has demanded our extradition. The council is reviewing the sanctuary claim before Danny could respond. Captain Lisa Wong entered with her datapad. Thought you'd want to know, she said. The story is spreading fast. At least 40 different species have broadcast footage of the incident. Great, Danny muttered. I'm galactic famous for being stubborn. Actually, Lisa continued, pulling up images on her datapad. You're galactic famous for something else. She showed him the headlines from various news networks. Human defies empire for child safety. One man's stand sparks galactic debate. The honey badger incident. Why won't humans back down? Honey badger? Danny asked, confused. Lisa grinned. Apparently, some Herzon researcher looked up Earth animals that show extreme protective behavior. They found videos of honey badgers defending their young against much larger predators. The name stuck. Greg Palmer added, entering behind Lisa. Half the station is calling you the honey badger now. Danny groaned and covered his face with his good hand. I just caught a kid. Yeah, but you caught her with the entire galaxy watching, Greg said. And then you refused to back down against an empire. He sat down on the edge of Danny's medical bed. People are talking, Danny. Not just humans, but other species too. Talking about what? Danny asked about how many times they've looked away. Greg said quietly. How many situations they've ignored because it was easier than getting involved. Lisa nodded. I've had 17 reports of species helping each other in situations they would have avoided before. A Herzon pulled a Relian child out of a malfunctioning transport yesterday. A group of Zenari intervened in a labor dispute to protect workers from abuse. Even some Vethric are questioning their own laws, she added. Young ones mostly. But the questions are getting louder. Vex? The former Vethric officer entered the room next. He had been staying on the station since his resignation, helping coordinate between different groups. The council is meeting today, he announced. They will decide on the sanctuary claim and whether the Galactic Charter applies to this situation. What are our chances? Danny asked. Vex hesitated. The Vethric have significant influence in the council, he admitted. But the Zenari testimony is powerful, and 12 other species have filed supporting briefs. Supporting briefs for what? Danny asked. For expanding child protection laws across all member species. Vex explained. Your actions have created an opening for reform that has been needed for decades. I didn't mean to start a political movement, Danny said. The best movements often start by accident, a new voice said from the doorway. An elderly human entered, wearing the formal robes of the human ambassador to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Chun, Lisa said, standing up straighter. I was wondering when Earth would send someone official, Danny said. Ambassador Patricia Chun smiled. I've been here for 2 days. Observing and gathering information, she pulled up a chair and sat beside Danny's bed. You've created quite a situation, Mr. Crawford. So I'm told, Danny replied. Some in the Earth government want me to apologize on humanity's behalf, Chun continued. To smooth things over with the Vethric and maintain diplomatic relations, Danny's stomach sank. And? He asked quietly, and I told them to go to hell, Chun said with a fierce smile. You did the right thing. You saved a child's life when no one else would. If that's not worth defending, then we have no business being part of galactic society. Relief washed over Danny. The council meeting starts in 2 hours, Chun continued. I need you to testify about what happened. Me? Danny asked, why not just use the recordings? Because words on a screen are different from looking someone in the eye, Chun explained. The council needs to see that you are not a troublemaker or a revolutionary. Just a man who did what anyone should have done. Danny looked at Sella, who was quietly coloring another picture at the small table. What happens to her if the council rules against us? He asked. Best case. She and her mother are returned to Vethric custody with restrictions on their treatment, Chun said. Worst case. They become examples to discourage others from challenging caste law. That's not acceptable, Danny said firmly. No, Chun agreed. It's not, which is why we need you to make the council understand what was at stake. 2 hours later, Danny stood in the council chamber. The massive room was filled with representatives from over 50 species. Each delegation had their own section with translation equipment and holographic displays. The Vethric occupied a prominent position near the center. Ambassador Krull sat with several other high-ranking officials, their faces showing barely contained anger. The Zanari delegation floated in their designated area, their crystalline bodies catching the chamber lights. Danny wore his cleanest work coveralls and the arm brace from his injury. Ambassador Chun had suggested formal clothing, but Danny insisted on being himself. "The human witness will approach," the council speaker announced. Danny walked to the central platform, very aware of hundreds of eyes watching him. "State your name and occupation for the record," the speaker requested. "Danny Crawford," he said. "Cargo specialist at Waypoint 7. Describe the events of 3 days ago," the speaker instructed. Danny took a breath and told his story. He kept it simple and factual. The platform malfunction, the falling child, his decision to catch her. He did not embellish or make himself sound heroic. He just explained what happened and why he made the choices he did. When he finished, Ambassador Krell stood to speak. "The witness claims he acted to save a life," Krell said. "But he violated Vethric sovereignty and cultural law in doing so. If we allow species to interfere in each other's internal affairs whenever they disagree with local customs, we invite chaos. With respect, Ambassador," Danny said. "I didn't interfere with your internal affairs. I caught a falling child. That's not political. That's physics and basic compassion. You challenged our caste system," Krell began. "I challenge the idea that any system is more important than a kid's life," Danny interrupted. "There's a difference," a Rullian council member spoke up. "The human makes a valid point," she said. "Child welfare is recognized as a universal concern in the Galactic Charter. Specific implementations vary by culture," Krell countered. "The Vethric system has maintained social stability for thousands of years by letting children die," Danny said quietly. The chamber fell silent. "By watching them fall and calling it law," Danny continued. "By punishing mothers who try to work and care for their kids at the same time." He looked around at all the assembled delegates. "I'm not trying to destroy your culture or your traditions," he said. "But if your tradition says to watch a kid fall and do nothing, then maybe that tradition needs to change." "How dare you?" Krell started. "He dares because he is right," Vex's voice called out. The young Vethric had entered the council chamber. "I am Vex, former tactical officer of the VSS Enforcer," he announced. "I watched my sister die because of our caste laws. I have lived with that shame my entire life." He moved to stand beside Danny. "This human showed me that shame is not inevitable," Vex continued. "That we can choose to value life over law. That courage means acting when others will not." More voices began speaking up. A Herzen described a similar incident on his home station. A Zanari explained how their species had reformed their own laws centuries ago. Even a few other Vethrics stood to share stories of loved ones lost to caste restrictions. Ambassador Chun approached the platform. "The human delegation proposes the Waypoint Accords," she announced. "Universal standards for child protection that apply across all member species. This is outrageous." Ambassador Krell shouted. "This is overdue," Chun replied calmly. The council speaker called for order. "The council will now vote on 3 questions," he announced. "First, does the sanctuary claim have merit under existing galactic law? Second, should child welfare standards be expanded and standardized? Third, will the individuals in question be granted protected status pending resolution?" The voting took less than 10 minutes. When it was over, the speaker announced the results. "The sanctuary claim is upheld." 3 months had passed since the council vote. Waypoint 7 had returned to something resembling normal operations. Though nothing was quite the same as before, Danny walked through the cargo bay with his datapad, checking inventory numbers just like always. His shoulder had healed completely, leaving only a slight stiffness when the station's artificial gravity fluctuated. The work was familiar and comforting, a return to the routine he had built over 3 years. Except now people recognized him everywhere he went. "Morning, honey badger." A Herzen loader called out cheerfully. Danny waved back. Still not entirely comfortable with the nickname, but accepting it. The cargo bay itself had been redesigned after the incident. New safety protocols were in place, and all loading platforms had triple redundant systems. More importantly, there were no longer restricted areas where workers brought their children because they had no other options. The station had established a childcare facility that was free for all workers, regardless of species or caste. It was a small change, but it meant everything to the families who used it. Danny heard small footsteps running toward him and smiled before he turned around. "Danny! Danny!" Sella called out, racing across the cargo bay floor. She had grown in 3 months and was much more confident now. Her English had improved dramatically from daily lessons at the station school. "Hey, kiddo," Danny said, kneeling down as she reached him. "Shouldn't you be in class?" "Early dismissal today," Nara explained, following at a more sedate pace. "They're preparing for the cultural festival tomorrow." Sella held up a drawing she had made. "Look, I drawed the whole station." Danny examined the picture carefully. It showed Waypoint 7 with dozens of different colored figures representing various species. Right in the center was a human figure holding a smaller blue figure. "This is really good," Danny said sincerely. "You're getting better at drawing every day. Mama says I can be an artist when I grow up," Sella announced proudly, "or an engineer, or a pilot, or anything I want." "That's right," Danny agreed, looking up at Nara. The former labor caste worker had transformed in 3 months. She now worked in station administration, helping other Vethric refugees adjust to life outside the caste system. Over 200 Vethric had requested asylum at Waypoint 7 since the council vote. Most were lower caste members seeking opportunities that would have been impossible on their home worlds. "I have a meeting with Ambassador Chun in an hour," Nara said. "She wants to discuss expanding the refugee program. Would you mind watching, Sella?" "Never," Danny replied. "Come on, kid. Let's check some cargo containers." Sella took his hand happily, and they walked through the bay together. She asked questions about everything, what each container held, where it was going, how the ships knew which way to travel. Danny answered them all patiently, enjoying her curiosity and enthusiasm. They reached his favorite spot in the cargo bay, a small observation window that looked out at the docked ships. "So many ships," Sella said, pressing her face against the window. "Do you think they're all going somewhere exciting?" "Probably," Danny said. "Most places in the galaxy are exciting when you're young and curious. Are you going somewhere exciting?" Sella asked. "Nope," Danny replied. "I'm staying right here." "Good," Sella said firmly. "Because I would miss you if you left." Danny felt that warm feeling in his chest again, the one that had been absent for so many years after his daughter died. He had thought that part of him was gone forever, buried with her. But this small alien child had somehow brought it back to life. Captain Lisa Huang found them there 20 minutes later. "Knew I'd find you here," she said. "Got some news you might want to hear." "Good news or bad news?" Danny asked. "Depends on your perspective," Lisa replied. "The Galactic Council just ratified the Waypoint Accords." Danny straightened up. "Already?" "I thought that would take years." "Normally it would," Lisa agreed. "But 17 species pushed for fast tracking, including the Vethric." "The Vethric?" Danny repeated in surprise. "Not all Vethric are like Ambassador Krell," Lisa explained. "The younger generation has been pushing for reform. Your incident gave them the momentum they needed." She pulled up her datapad and showed him the headlines. "Vethric Prime abolishes caste system. Youth movement sweeps Vethric worlds. Former Ambassador Krell facing corruption charges." "Wow," Danny said quietly. "You started a revolution," Lisa said. "Still claiming you just caught a kid?" "That's all I did," Danny insisted. "Maybe," Lisa replied. But sometimes that's enough to change everything. Greg Palmer arrived next, carrying a small package. Special delivery for the station's most famous cargo handler, he announced. Danny opened the package to find a medal inside. It was beautifully crafted, showing a stylized image of a human catching a falling figure. "What's this?" Danny asked. "The Council of Species Safety Award," Greg explained. "First one ever given. They're naming it after you. The Crawford Medal will be awarded annually to individuals who risk themselves to protect others." Danny stared at the medal in his hands. "This is too much," he said. "It really isn't," Nara's voice said. She had returned from her meeting early and stood watching them. "You gave my daughter her life back," Nara continued. "You gave me freedom I never dreamed possible. You showed the galaxy that sometimes the rules are wrong, and someone has to be brave enough to say so." Other workers had gathered around now, representing at least a dozen different species. Vex pushed through the crowd, wearing civilian clothing now. He had started working as a cultural liaison, helping Vethric refugees integrate into galactic society. "I have something as well," Vex said. He held out a small crystal that glowed with inner light. "This is a Vethric memory crystal," he explained. "We use them to preserve important moments in our history. I have recorded your story, and the stories of all those who stood with you that day. It will be taught in Vethric schools for generations, so that our children learn the lesson you taught us." "What lesson is that?" Danny asked. "That catching falling children is more important than following falling empires," Vex replied. The assembled crowd cheered. Danny felt overwhelmed by all the attention. He had never wanted to be a hero or start a movement. He had just seen a child falling and done what anyone should do. But looking around at all these different species gathered together, at the changes that had rippled out from one moment of decision, he realized something important. Maybe that was the point. Maybe heroism was not about grand gestures or epic battles. Maybe it was just about doing the right thing in the moment it was needed, regardless of the consequences. "Speech." Someone called out, "Speech." Others echoed. Danny looked down at Sella, who was watching him with bright, trusting eyes. "I'm not good at speeches," he said, "but I'll tell you what I told the council." He looked around at all the assembled faces. A child was falling. I caught her. That's it. I didn't think about laws or politics or diplomatic incidents. I just saw someone who needed help, and I helped. If that's revolutionary, then maybe we've been doing things wrong for too long. He knelt down beside Sella. "This little girl deserves to grow up safe and free," he continued. "Every child in the galaxy deserves that. If my actions help make that happen, even a little bit, then the dislocated shoulder was worth it." The crowd erupted in applause. Danny stood up, feeling embarrassed by the attention. Okay, he said. "Show's over. Everyone back to work." The crowd dispersed slowly. Still talking excitedly, Danny returned to his inventory check, with Sella following along beside him. "Danny?" Sella asked after a while. "Yeah, kid? Why did you catch me when nobody else did?" It was not the first time she had asked, and Danny suspected it would not be the last. He thought about all the complicated answers he could give, about his past as a rescue worker, about losing his own daughter, about guilt and redemption. But none of those were really the truth. "Because you were falling," he said simply. "And I could help." Sella seemed to consider this for a moment. "So if someone else falls, you'll help them too?" "Yeah," Danny agreed. "I will." "Good," Sella said. "Because that's what Earth Guardians do." She hugged his leg quickly and then ran off to examine a container full of art supplies bound for a school on a distant colony. Danny watched her go and smiled. Earth Guardian. He kind of liked that title better than Honey Badger. The cargo bay doors opened and a new ship docked. Work continued as it always did, different species moving together, loading and unloading the endless stream of commerce that kept the galaxy connected. But now there were children playing in designated safe areas. Now, there were workers who did not have to choose between earning money and caring for their families. Now there were people who watched out for each other instead of looking away. One catch, one moment of decision, had changed so much. Danny returned to his datapad and continued his inventory check. The numbers were exactly right, just like they should be. Some things never changed, and some things. He thought as he watched Sella laugh at something another child had said. Changed everything. Captain Lisa Wong approached one more time. Station log entry, she said, recording on her datapad. 3 months after the Waypoint incident. Operations have returned to normal with significant improvements in safety protocols and worker welfare. The human known as Danny Crawford continues his work in cargo operations, refusing all offers of promotion or recognition beyond what he considers necessary.